Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Ask Me Anything session with CFO Connect. We're starting just a couple minutes late, making sure everyone can get logged in. So just a moment here and we'll get started. Pedro is joining us and we'll be good to go. In the meantime, you can introduce yourselves in the chat. Say hello, where you're tuning in from tonight. Hello, Pedro.
Hello.
Let me just turn off all my notifications here. All right. So thanks again for joining us. We've got people tuning in from all over the world. So good evening for some of you. Good morning for our friends on the West Coast. As we are going to jump into this just as soon as possible, I'll do a quick introduction. Let's see where everyone's coming from. Amsterdam, London, wow, Sri Lanka, France, Zurich, very cool. Well, I'll share a little bit about myself and where I'm tuning in from. My name is Dominique, and I'm on the community team at CFO Connect, which is a global community of finance leaders. And I recognize lots of familiar names from the community joining us today. So hello, everyone. As a finance community, we host events and workshops like this one. We have a private Slack group for CFOs and produce a lot of helpful content on our blog and now our new podcast, which we just launched last week and is called CFO Yeah, if you'd like to check it out on Apple or Spotify. A little bit about CFO Connect. If you're new to the community, it's a community created by Spendesk, which is a go-to spend and expense management solution made for modern finance teams. So what that means is employees can spend what they need wherever they are, and finance stays in complete control and has visibility over everything that's spent. So Spendesk also lets you automate tasks like collecting receipts, reconciling payments, expense reimbursements, and lots more. So it's a real game changer for finance teams. So of course, we want to mention it today. And CFO Connect members can try Spendesk for free. So you can reach out if you'd like to learn more. So it looks like we've got a lot of folks who have joined us, so we can jump into the topic of today, which is all about our community member, Pedro Barros, head of finance at Remote. So welcome, Pedro.
Thank you.
And you're joining us from where?
I'm joining you from Lisbon. Very sunny day, so very glad to be here in this very wonderful day.
Oh, I'm jealous. Wish I could say the same in Paris. It is dark and cold out, but good for you. Well, a little about Pedro before I turn it over to him and open up questions to the community. So as you know, he's head of finance at Remote. And Remote, you may have heard of in the news lately. They're a platform to manage global payroll, tax, benefits, and compliance, so companies can employ anyone, anywhere in the world. So it's quite a relevant tool right now with so many teams kind of dispersing and becoming remote. So they've had a pretty big year, and we're very excited that Pedro has come on to share more about his journey with Remote from a finance perspective and answer all of your questions. So, or as many as we can get to in 50 minutes. So how it's going to work is any questions you have, you can go ahead and add them to the questions tab, which is right next to the chat. So please include them there. If you put them in the chat, we might miss them. So you can add your questions as we go, and we'll keep an eye on that. And even if you're not asking questions, we'd love for you to vote on the questions that you like best to help us kind of prioritize, as I know we'll have plenty to dive into today. So to kind of kick things off and give folks a little context and inspiration for the questions they can ask you, Pedro, why don't you set the stage and tell us a little about yourself and your background?
Definitely. Thank you very much, Dominic. Thank you very much, everyone. Pleasure being here, sharing my experience, especially with the current circumstances and how the world order has changed over the last 6-8 months. as you mentioned, remote is enabling global employment, and which is very opposite to our current days, and it's very helpful to companies that want to be able to continue employing or to employ people across the globe, where, especially at times that we are living. I see a question from Carl on what are the biggest challenges over the next 6 months. And I think it's the unpredictability, especially around world health and the world pandemic. I think it's very hard for us to really understand where things are going, how the world will be impacted, especially post elections in the US as well. So where things are trending, for example, things are going very well with the dollar to euro at 120 and stuff like that. So I think it's the unpredictability, which is one of our biggest challenges over the next 6 months. For us, we are, as most of you know, we started close to a year ago. So we are still at very early days of establishing our core functions and foundations and operations. So on the finance side, the challenges are immense, from setting up systems, core finance systems, ERPs, setting up processes, and being able to also set up our treasury functions globally. If you think that we are responsible for paying employee salaries, it's crucial that we do that in a good manner and we are compliant globally. So we must be sure that we are compliant, that we have the foundations in place for that.
Awesome. Thanks for that background, Pedro. And you mentioned that you joined Remote, it was about 10 months ago, right?
Yes, I joined Remote right at the beginning of the pandemic. So I was made redundant on my previous role, given the circumstances, and joined Remote in April this year. So it has been a wild ride since. It was right when we raised the first round, and we just raised the subsequent round last month. So things have been quite active.
Right. Yeah, I noticed your Series A, which was a pretty hefty Series A, 35 million, came about just 6 months after your seed round. So obviously there's a lot of interest from investors. But backing up a little bit, for just to give a little context on the company, Remote was founded in 2019, so a year ago. And assuming that the business was created even before the pandemic and before we knew that remote work would become even more important in 2020. So can you talk a little bit more about like the product and the business model?
Yes, definitely. The idea came way before pandemic and remote having to be the option and the go-to solution for companies. Job, one of the founding team at GitLab, always faced the challenges of being able to employ people across the globe. GitLab being one of the pioneers of global distributed companies with more than 1,500 people today distributed across the world. And for every new country or for every new role they wanted to hire, it was always challenging how you give equality to all your employees, how you can actually employ them under security and social security locally, and local benefits and compliantly. So a lot of the times companies have to use contractor services, which is far from ideal from a security, employment security quality perspective. And so he always faced the challenge of, I want to solve this. And he experienced firsthand the issue of actually employing globally. Marcelo, our CTO, having had experience with global distributed companies as well, and a very strong tech background, they came together to really find a solution, a scalable solution for us to be able to employ companies across the globe. So to give some more visibility into the business model, we employ people on the ground in different countries on behalf of companies. So we work on a services agreement with a company, and the company then we just employ people locally, which is very advantage for them. They can have access to all benefits, they have access to security, even something as simple as having a mortgage where you need to be employed or having a full-time employment, it helps a lot. And doing this at global scale, it goes a bit into our mission of wealth distribution and allowing people to just employ anyone anywhere.
Yeah, certainly. So it's been a big year for the company, and we'll dig into that. There's already a few questions coming in, but just to paint a more of a picture of the company, there's about how many employees, and where are all those employees?
Well, we have people across the world today. We are close to 60 employees. It's growing quite fast. And but we have people from San Francisco to Philippines, Indonesia, Italy, Nigeria, Portugal, as it is myself and some other team members, Ireland, I know, you name it. Like we are very, very distributed. We work heavily asynchronously based. We focus a lot on documentation. Our handbook is open and you can see a lot of it and how we work there. And it has been quite interesting. My background was not remote. I was very office heavy. I worked in banking before, so being far from the office was evil. So it's very different times and very different circumstances, but definitely an increase in productivity for myself and I think for the team overall.
Interesting. Well, it'll be interesting to hear your perspective on some of the pros and cons of remote work, and certainly for a finance team. So what does the finance team at Remote look like?
So up to next week, it looks like myself only. Okay. No, being a bit unfair. We have two business operations managers that help me a lot on the finance side. And I have been using and working quite heavily with one of the big four companies into establishing our core foundation and operations. And I have been relying a lot on that as well. So from next week, we'll have more people joining the team.
Okay, well, congrats. And I'm sure there's some tools and processes that help you manage a whole finance team by yourself, or up until now anyway. So any tools or systems that are worth mentioning?
As I mentioned, we rely a lot on documentation. So we leverage Notion to record all our processes and anything that should be passed to the rest of the company and open. We rely a lot on Asana for task management and keeping track of projects and goals, and even making sure everyone is on pace and understands where we are. But then working heavily with third parties and outside agents, we unfortunately still very email heavy, but we are moving into a direction where we are moving everyone to Asana and helping even people that work outside of remote engaging out of there, so we can centralize much better all our tasks and efforts.
Okay, good to know. All right, well, we've already got some questions for you if you'd like to jump in now that we've set the stage on your background and a little more about Remote as a company. So it looks like the most popular question here is from Marianne. How do you use scenario planning as a tool to plan for the next few months?
Marianne, I'm going to be fully honest and transparent about this. We are not at that stage yet. We would love to be. But like we started 18 months ago, we started commercial operations 7, 8 months ago. So we are still in very early days of setting up, and we decided to dedicate our efforts into re-establishing our operations more than our financial planning on that side. Things have been going well for us, so we are still very much in the setup phase of a lot of our operations, which is much more crucial when we are already live in 17 countries and plan to be live in many more before the end of the year, and next year very aggressive on the growth in terms of countries we are present. So it was prioritization.
That's fine. Appreciate the honesty there. Let's see. All right, next question is, how do you raise 35 million in a Series A? What factors would you say were the main drivers?
Well, Matthew, I think our space is very attractive these days, especially with the name like ours. But the space is very attractive. I think the fundamentals are there. Companies are shifting the way they are working. People want to work in different ways and in different places. And every day we have less reasons to actually give access to people across the globe to jobs in different places. So it stops being a neighborhood thing and starts being a global thing. And that global play is playing quite positively for the companies that are taking advantage of that. And you see GitLab, there are reports today of $6 billion in valuation for a company that started less than a decade ago. So clearly there are advantage of that, and you can be hiring the best people across the world. And having the platform to do that, and as mentioned, we opened 17 entities. We are operating in 70 countries. We are opening in many more countries. Plays a crucial factor into really demonstrating to our investors and to the market that how serious we are about it and how well we can deliver on our proposition. Because in the end, this is a global play, so you need to be present across the globe or have a very high density spread across the globe. So that's how we managed to attract. Obviously, growth was there, team was there. So it was a combination of factors, but not very much like you say, oh, it was metric A or metric B. I think it's much more the market direction and the right team to deliver on that.
And Pedro, I remember you mentioning that you didn't meet any investors face-to-face through this process because, during a pandemic. So how was that experience? Did you have any prior experience fundraising to compare it to?
I didn't even meet anyone in my team yet. So actually, I briefly met Marcelo just to exchange some documents and off we went. But you don't need to be present to be able to negotiate your firm and fundraising. You need to demonstrate that you are serious about it and you can deliver on that. It's not where you are that determines that. I've fundraised before, flying into investor meetings and going around the world for fundraising. But seeing how can be done on a remote way is much more efficient. You can meet people that are really interested in your business. You can meet many more people that actually teach you stuff that can actually help you, and not being dependent of 12-hour flights to SF and then back to New York and then back overnight to the office and trying to work out your day on a red eye. It's very, very different, and it's much more convenient actually working and doing fundraising remotely, to be honest.
Well, and it's certainly aligned with your brand and your product as well.
Of course, I have to.
Everything can be done remotely, right?
I think we are proving that. So when like on my window, I can overlook the airport in Lisbon, and before the pandemic was crazy, and it was almost sleepless trying to get through the night with no planes, and it was constant traffic. And now we see the occasional plane, EasyJet, and some Wizz Air or stuff like that. But business continues going, and companies continue growing, and we continue delivering. Obviously, not in all the sectors, and tourism has been obviously significantly affected locally. But things continue moving, and we have a high density of the team here in Portugal. People are doing a great job to enable global employment out of their homes, so no need to be anywhere in front of their computer, to be honest.
Yeah, I think we've all experienced that firsthand. So considering that remote has grown probably even faster than anyone imagined, considering the context of 2020, how are you thinking about structuring your finance team? This is a question from Ismail. What are the key roles that you're hiring for in the next few months that are going to be most crucial for you?
I think I want my priority structure for the priorities that we have for the firm. One of them being treasury. Obviously, we are flowing millions of dollars across the world, invoicing and then paying out to employees. It's crucial, so we need to make sure that our treasury functions are very well established, and even enabling our own technology to connect and to accelerate our treasury management. Obviously, on the controlling side, it's extremely relevant. We need to make sure that we are compliant, that we have the processes in place for scale, and maybe in other parts of the business we are still in very early days of experimentation and different things and feature development and product development. But on the finance side, we need to be slightly ahead, and we need to be working much more on the scale-up mentality, and that's what we do. So the team will be very organic, the growth. I'm not trying to just increase for the sake of increasing, because there is a huge demand and there is for us to continue doing things. But I can leverage outside help for that. But I want to have critical strategic functions that can not only do the work, but also think ahead in place to help us.
Great. Hopefully that answers your question, Ismail. And Leon, I think you had the similar question. Out of curiosity, Pedro, Remote is a fairly unique company in the sense that it's fully remote, very fast growing. So what are some key qualities that you're looking for in the first people that you're bringing onto your finance team?
I think it's people that can have an impact straight away. So if they join, you can see and you can understand that they have the drive and to make an impact from day one. Obviously, there is a ramp up, and we all take time to ramp up, but they clearly know what they're doing and how they can contribute to remote. And it's ownership. It's very important, given that we are working in different time zones. We'll not be on the phone constantly. Far from that, it's very document-based and task-based. We want to make sure that people have good ownership. They're their own managers and the manager of one. So those are two critical characteristics we hire for. Obviously, there is all the technical background that you expect, but those are critical.
Yeah, makes sense. Kai is asking, due to the current crisis and more focus on remote talent because of it, how did your company, Remote, do commercially since March, if you can share?
Obviously, like I mentioned, we started commercial operations end of Q1 this year, and we have been growing quite fast. We continuously try to deliver on our customer needs of employing people globally. Sometimes it's not easy and the requests are complex, and we try to accommodate as much as possible and to try to accelerate new country openings just to deliver on customer needs. But things thankfully have been growing quite fast. I think it goes with the trend of the market, to be honest. We see all the companies that are working remotely and hiring remotely and enabling teams to work remotely, and we are at the forefront of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw a stat shared publicly that was you've been doubling your customer base about every month this year. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
It was in TechCrunch, so I figured we could say it.
You can say it. No, we've been. The growth has been exponential, as you would expect at this stage. Thankfully, still with no bumps, which is very good, and I think speaks for the quality of the team that we have in delivering the product that we offer. But I'm sure we'll face those, and when we'll be here to tackle it. So.
Great. Well, there's a lot of questions popping up, so I'm just going to remind everyone to vote, which will help us prioritize. So it looks like the next most popular question is from Shane. Where did it go? How do you mitigate the risk of scaling before having monetized product market fit?
I think for us, a key mitigant is continuing. It's the scale, it's the global scale. Companies and customers want to work as when we have a global offering, not just a certain countries offering. So we need to work very much on that side to really mitigate the need of, but I cannot work with you because you don't offer X countries. So that's critical. While we determine what is product market fit for us. And that is a critical one. And we have been ramping up the team because we are moving services to a product. So it's very crucial that we can do that, but that we can support everyone in this aspect. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, and for a little more context on how remote operates, you actually set up entities in each country that you're doing businesses. So you have almost like a local network of contractors. Can you talk more about how that works?
Yes, we work with global players, obviously, for the scale that we want, and advisors and legal teams, etc. Obviously, we need to engage locally to get local expertise, but we are opening entities country by country, growing quite fast, and we'll continue delivering on that. And obviously, the challenges of opening an entity in Canada, UK, etc., are different. So we need expertise from advisors and partners to enable this. That's why I mentioned that the finance function at Remote is like operating a FTSE 500 company because of the group structure and the complexity. The business model is quite simple, but the complexity comes out of the global structure, as you mentioned. So we have a very strong network of teams that we work with globally.
It definitely sounds complex. Another question from Marianne asking, how does Remote manage company culture in a fast-growing distributed team? Are there any examples you can share of how culture is implemented?
We proactively focus on that, and you have two co-founders that are obsessed with that and are obsessed with how people are working, how people are behaving. They're a critical example of that. We obviously continue focusing a lot on asynchronous communication. So for us to be able to actually know who's who, we need to have frequent meetups. Before we had the question of the day, every day at 4:30, we used to meet on a call. We are too big for a Zoom call these days, but we still have in 2 time zones team bonding calls, for example. Where we just engage and spend some time with our colleagues on a very informal way. We meet frequently each other, so just without context or without any agenda. We may bring agenda, usually works always pops up, but we do. We spend time on hangouts outside of our normal working stuff, so we can just relax. But values are always very well ingrained in everyone. People are hired towards our values, not the other way around. I think values was the first thing that was established in our company, actually, before anything else was drafted. Job and Marcelo drafted our company values. And we continue hiring for that, and kindness being one of them. And for that, it trickles out everything because people are very open, very receptive, and engage very well with each other. But it's very proactive. It's not, we don't leave it to chance.
Can you share what any of those values are?
Oh, they are public, so I can definitely share. You have kindness, you have ownership, you have excellence, and you have a critical one, which is automation, which is a very interesting one, which in our business, and given the background of our founders, it's everything we strive to, which is we should always strive to automate our tasks and really bring more value out of the things that we are doing. And we brought that recently by one of our colleagues suggested that, and actually it was very opposite to everything that we were doing, so it was good.
I like that. Automation seems like a great value for a fast-growing startup. All right, back to the questions. So Sabine is asking, do you plan to drop pricing from the current $600 a month to something more affordable to SMBs?
Yes, I think all pricing is very dynamic, and I think companies that just fix a price and leave it there to the end of time, it's not the right approach. So we are always very open to feedback, and it's something that we are always on the lookout to try to understand market dynamics, what our customers need and demand. So potentially we can consider that, but if you look at other offerings from established players, and EOR is not new, I think it's what is new is how we are doing it and enabling really technology in a global scale to do it with our own entities. Used to be much more expensive from 15, 20 to 50% of a global annual salary. So $600, it tends to be very competitive to that. Obviously, as I mentioned, it's a constant discussion. We are always very attentive to that. And if SMBs need a better pricing, it's something we can always look at, but needs to be dynamic. Like we've changed from a percentage model, which was we started to figure out first it was very complex for companies to really be calculating 10%, and if they do a raise, they end up paying the remote almost more than on the rate that they are paying the employee, and it was very against what we were trying to do, which was simplifying this complex market. So we moved to a fixed pricing, and which is proving to be much easier for our customers and for the market. Most of our customers actually are SMBs, so far seem to be around the right pricing, but happy to look into that.
Makes sense. And in such a small organization, I'm sure that finance is in a lot of those conversations around product and pricing. And
yeah, we have cross-functional teams. So we have different products and different focuses for different product managers, and they leverage a cross-functional team from operations, finance, customer success, sales. So we are very much involved in a lot of these discussions, and especially on pricing. Like it's very easy for finance to really understand, even on a bottom-up approach on margins and margin impact of the different pricing levels that we can charge. So it's always very relevant to be at the table when making these decisions. Then we can make a decision to go towards customer acquisition, and but it's at least it was on purpose, and it was a premeditated thing. It was not like we didn't know what was going to be the impact. Like we know what's the impact, and we make the decision of doing it.
Great, super helpful. Question from Sarah asking, do you use any revenue recognition software?
We are implementing an ERP, like we are starting to work with SAP. So everything will be centralized there. So far, it has been quite simple to do that by hand. It's getting a bit out of hand, to be honest. But from the beginning of 2021, we'll be moving everything to SAP. And from there, it will be much easier to start doing all revenue recognition and all finance functions almost centralized there, to be honest.
Wow, that's pretty big for a company of your size to be already implementing SAP. What was the decision-making behind that? Was it your idea?
I'm not sure I don't know who had this idea. I hope it was not me, because it was pretty crazy. It's not very common to see companies in such early stage to implement such a complex product. The reason comes out of the complexity of the business and compliance at the global level, and then different levels of consolidation and reporting. So we had, as I mentioned before, like in finance, we are working much more on the scale-up mode. And we want to be prepared for that, and we know that the growth is there. The challenges of owning several dozen entities across the world are massive, and we don't want to be in a position that we fail because we didn't know something, or we didn't recognize something, or we didn't manage to consolidate in time our account or to report properly. SAP was chosen. We had a very complex RFP process, as you can imagine, for this type of projects, and SAP had the best solution. Although it would not be like, they're very manufacturing focused, like very old school, but they were very, very, very supportive of an early stage company. They brought their team to really work with us and to really kick us off and to enable us implementing SAP in a very simple and straightforward manner, which we're also doing with Ernst & Young. And it's working out quite well, to be honest.
Okay, so SAP can work for startups.
They can. It's not. I don't think they work with everyone, and I don't think it's for everyone. I think actually the opposite. But given the complexity of the business, we had to go there. But yes, they are increasingly working with more startups. They have a cloud solution which can be quite simplified if you just go with their standard model. Obviously, you need to justify it on the business, but for us, it made all the sense given the many companies we had.
That's super interesting. Well, somewhat related question from Ismail. What finance infrastructure, people, processes, systems do you build first for each new country you open in, and how do you integrate to the group HQ finance infrastructure?
So that was I think one of my biggest challenges initially. It was, how are we going to do finance in this in a very fast paced company, opening new countries, and it's just it's not like one country every new month. Now it's multiple countries and in batches and per month. So it was how do we go about it? And we had very different options of centralizing everything in remote, which would mean I would have a very, very large team to be able to accommodate for everything from tax managers to transfer pricing to financial report, everything that we would have to have everything in-house and with different specializations across the world, which didn't seem the best option for acceleration and scalability. We could have local partners, but again, managing 10, 15, 20, 60 local partners on the finance side, just an accounting, bookkeeping, reporting, seemed rather complex. So we decided to centralize, and we are establishing a shared service center to work with us on all finance functions.
Okay. Hopefully that answers your question, Ismail. I love this one from Mehdi asking, how important are unit economics in your long-term financial planning? What is a unit of sale for remote?
If you think about our business model and how costly it is to open a new country, we only work at scale. So unit economics for us are quite relevant, and it's where we make. Our units are employees that we hire, so obviously we charge a fee per employee, and how many more employees obviously we have per country. We go into profitability mode in that country. So unit economics. I think unit economics are crucial for every business, not just ours. Ours tends to be rather simple because volumes are not massive, are not like e-commerce. So we can much better triage and understand allocation of costs, but it's critical.
Great. Okay, that's very helpful. Christian has a question. What keeps you awake in this hypergrowth stage? Any headaches or smooth sailing, plain sailing?
Many headaches. I think one of the most challenging things for me has been just we didn't scale the team fast enough, especially the finance team, and even working with the third parties. It's never the same thing as having your team supporting that growth. So I think that was one of the key things that kept me up at night, was trying to grow the team. It's not easy. Especially for our setup, like we are very mature on the finance function, but still very early stage. So finding someone that fits into this weird zone, it's not easy. But hiring was something that kept me up at night for sure. Because if I was not doing it, I was working, and I was like wake up at night anyways.
Yeah. Any key learnings or advice you would give to other folks at fast-growing companies?
It's what Job kept telling me, like just hire, focus on hiring. But then you have all the other tasks, but hiring should be a priority. I think it's everyone knows it, but when you have so much to do, how much can you really prioritize that? But on a scaling mode, it's what you need to do is hire very good people that are better than you doing their thing, And thankfully, we are growing the team in all aspects with this, which is good.
Okay, great. Let's see. We've got a question here from, let's see, Karel. What do you feel will be your biggest challenge in the next 6 months? Or did we answer that already? I think we did. I think you answered that at the very beginning.
Yeah, I think we did at the beginning, but I think all the setup of the finance function, we did a lot over the last 6 months, but there is a lot to do. And I think up to now was really understanding where we want to be. And over the next 6 months will be a lot the building of that, from treasury to implementing SAP, which will be a very interesting project for 2021. And many other like processes and controls, etc. So now the building of all this and making sure it works and it fits our growth, it fits our needs. And something that I always keep a focus on is that it's not slowing down the business. I'm here to enable the business. I'm not here to just put processes that will start impacting the growth of remote, the growth of our product and our offering. And even when implementing, for example, SAP, it was always a focus, like how can I make the best out of this without slowing down my business by bringing such a complex and mature system to work with. And I think we found the right balance on that. And it's definitely the next 6 months are going to be good fun.
Yeah, I love that perspective of finance as an enabler for the rest of the business.
It has to be. We are here for that. I think finance just focusing on the past is gone, and we are here as an enabler. And you can see many solutions that are popping up in the market, Vendas being one of them, and we use that internally. And it's critical that we can really help people move faster and remove roadblocks they have. Why should anyone have to spend a sales executive spending half a day just filling out information? Or just find ways to sort out and live with whatever you have. Spend expenses the same, like why should you still, but let's not spend money in a system, people can fill up an Excel sheet. Of course they can, but it costs them time and money to the business. So why not scale? Why not find solutions that are good for your business, good for your team, and move on with them? Just quickly bring them on, implement, and train people to work with them and continue.
Absolutely. Completely agree with all of that. Question from Christian. What are your 5 most important KPIs, finance and non-finance related? So
now has been a lot on growth. So we have been focusing a lot on that. We don't have a lot of data yet, so as I mentioned, we started commercial operations 6 and 8 months ago. So KPIs are still very light, and we are still figuring out exactly what are the best KPIs for us. I like to control a lot revenue per accounts to really understand the position of our customers, if they are doing one-off hires with us, or if they are moving to bringing their teams over. So that expansion and net expansion on our own customers is quite relevant. And then obviously the gross margins per country, per customer, so really understand that. It's quite interesting.
Great. Thank you. Well, we've got about 13 more minutes left. So if you've got a burning question, add it in the questions tab so we can hopefully get to all of them. Let's see. Sarah is asking, have you found it challenging to create a budget/hiring plan given your rapid growth and the unpredictability?
Very. Usually we go into defining our business plan for 21. And then after focusing for a couple of days, we pause it and then focus again on just enabling anyone to grow. And then we go back and revisit. It's really, really hard. Like we have very scarce data to base our growth on. Even funnel metrics are very limited. So just assumptions for assumption's sake, come on. So we are still trying to build some more data to be able to more easily and more rationally build projection models.
Okay, great. And are you budgeting, forecasting on what type of basis? Monthly, quarterly?
Any forecast for us, it has to be on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Because we have new countries, we can understand growth per country. We already start to see a pattern of initial growth per country, how many hires. So it's important that we do it.
That keeps you busy then every month.
For sure.
Well, related to building your team, Ismail asks, what is the lead time to hire a good controller, cash ops, or treasury manager?
I had, I'd say 60 to 90 days almost. More than 400 or 500 applications. So for each role, so it's not easy. As I mentioned, there are very challenges of hiring for remote. The maturity of the person that we need, but still being very operational and dynamic and being able to do the groundwork is critical. Someone that is also willing to join an 18-month-old company. It's very interesting, like we're still in very early days. So although our fundraising and potentially our growth and our brand reflect a more mature remote, like in a lot of things, we are still very early stage, so it's not for everyone. So for us, any role is going to be 60, 90 days at least.
Yeah, makes sense. Sharon's asking about the tools you use to manage subscription payments, or maybe you can talk about the tool stack that you currently use right now.
So for subscription, and we built internally. So we decided it was easier for the time being. We want to centralize that in our own system. There is no need to integrate a third party, and third parties don't do, like we have worked with many in the past, like ChargeBees and etc. But when we looked into them, and it's not easy to work. There's a lot of outliers into our model. We could charge the management fee on a subscription basis, but then we invoice employment as well, employment costs, and these vary. So it was not easy. So we decided to build one internally. We have been going through several interactions, and it's starting to be quite efficient, to be honest. We were invoicing yesterday, so it was you have first-hand experience, and I think we already reduced like 3-4 people work for a week into one day, which is
okay. Interesting. Any other tools you're using to automate finance processes?
On that side, no. We have obviously we're implementing Spendesk early days, but we are implementing Spendesk on that side. International payments, we have that relatively automated, connected to our system. But we are still moving. That's why we've put automation into our values, is that we can start moving much more towards that. But we also need the right partners to do that. So we are establishing those relationships, like SAP being one of them, working also with global banks, which then we can enable direct APIs to really automate a lot of the processes that we run on cash operations, treasury, etc. So we are moving a lot into many mature solutions. So usually very different from what I did in the past as well, like where we were working ChargeBee and it was quite efficient. Stripe ChargeBee combination works quite well. These are different times, but yeah, so different solutions.
Great. Well, we've got a new round of questions coming in as our time is coming to an end. So let's see. Leon asks, raising a Series A 6 months after the seed round, I assume you didn't need the money, but were just in a position to raise again. How highly would you recommend to go with opportunistic fundraising for a company that's benefiting from the current situation? And how much funding do you think is too much? It's 3 questions in one.
Yeah. I think more than anything, you need to know what are you going to do with your capital. Having capital sitting and not being worked, it's painful for everyone watching, both for yourself and our investors. So as long as you have you have a way to use that capital, either people, either providers, like wherever it may need to be, but towards growth, I think it's critical. And how much is too much? I think the market dictates that, and usually the market doesn't give you too much. If the market is giving a certain allocation of capital, it's because there is a belief that there is a delivery on that allocation of capital. Obviously, then there are some cases that are a bit extreme, but I don't think we are talking about those. Obviously, it's not like we need it. The cash is not like we were ongoing on we are running out of capital. It was not that. It was we have a strategy. Our investors were fully aligned with our strategy of growing our global presence, of really accelerating our commercial operations so we could further deliver our solution to more companies that were in high demand of our solution. We really want to enable people from anywhere in the world to be employed and to have opportunities to work for some of the best companies in the world that potentially are not where they are living or they can work from. And investors were aligned with that, and there was an allocation of capital for what we were aiming. I think we always need to keep everyone's interest in mind, and you have obviously investors' interest, you have founders' interest. You need to want to keep everyone motivated and really focusing on your mission. And if all that combines, I think we can move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's see. We've got a few minutes left, and there's a question here from Antonio about routines that you set for yourself on a weekly and monthly basis, as you are responsible for a lot. Are there any life hacks you can share?
No, I think the most important life hack I have is having blocked time for my family. I have from 5:30 to 9 in the evening is the calendar blocked. I don't care. I don't do work on those hours. It doesn't always work out, but in most of the cases it does, like 95, 97% of the time. So that is critical to me, and it's the only way I can go about doing what I'm doing, and on a crazy working schedules. It's that something I like to do is have sessions of deep work as well, where people are not bothering me. So I do that usually a couple of times per week, like a few slots of deep work, so I can really focus in getting things out of my desk and really enabling people around me. I work on a zero inbox, so I don't pile up emails.
Wow.
Unless I'm off. I was off on Friday, and obviously today I'm paying for that. But I work on zero inbox. Even if I just postpone it, but I never have something pending on my side to move on. Obviously, then there are the finance routines that we need to make. Checking compliance on a monthly basis, what needs to be reported on the following month, obviously the month closures every month, which we work very closely, obviously, with the shared service center. I don't do it all by myself. Banking reconciliation, we are doing it bi-monthly. So there, obviously, you have the standard finance routines. We have invoicing, which we do it ourselves as well. Still, it was moving from manual to semi-automated, which is quite good. Employment payments, so I am still doing all those, and it's obviously a monthly one. So there are a lot of things that have a monthly requirement. So it's easy to kind of schedule things around that. And thankfully it doesn't fall all on the first or last week of the month, so we can work out quite well around that. But
Great. Well, I feel bad for cutting into your family time tonight. I know it's an exception to the rule, so thank you again.
It's still okay. Still 3 minutes for my family time.
Okay, you still make it for dinner. Well, one fun question that we like to end on is, have there been any resources that have helped you in your finance career, or especially your journey over the past year, that you would recommend to other finance folks?
I think over the last year, I don't know. I just like I go in a lot of information, so I tend to absorb, and I have a lot of sources of information. Obviously, you have a very powerful tool with a lot of senior people reporting it in your blog at Spendesk, obviously. But I mostly like engaging with people that have done what I'm doing now, but they already passed that side of things. So usually when I move, and I did in my previous company, and now I'm doing things that I never did in the past, and I like to engage with people that have done it, so they can really accelerate what I'm going to do, and I get into the mindset. Maybe they will not explain everything, but it's much more on the mindset of how to get things done and how to go to the next level. So I try to focus a lot on people more than just reading something. I think the life experiences speak much more than just reading something or using a certain tool. Or
Yeah, so you rely on your network.
yeah, and I try to extend it, and people are very receptive. So it's really cool. Like very rarely I reached out to anyone that said, no, I don't have time, or maybe it was not the right time, but there was always time for a later date to catch up or to connect. So I have been very thankful to the network on that. And that has been critical for my acceleration and decisions and choices, and I rely a lot on that.
Oh, wonderful. Well, our time is up, unfortunately, for us. Thank you so much, Pedro, for sharing your experience and insights, and thanks everyone for joining and asking great questions. If you are in our CFO Connect Slack group, I'm sure Pedro would be happy to answer a question over there too. That's what we're there for as a network and a community. So thanks again, everyone. And Pedro, enjoy the time with your family.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.